All right, you're all set.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. So happy to see all your faces again. It is nice to reconnect. Even if this is the way we have to connect, it's good to connect this way. I appreciate you joining us for this last meeting prior to winter break. We sent out a couple of articles yesterday. I don't know if anyone had a chance to take a look. But to give you some background, one of the articles was sent to me a couple of different times from a couple of our parents, and I thought it was important to share. And then the other article that was kind of looking at things from a teacher perspective was in a New York Times school coronavirus briefing that I get every morning. And so I thought that was an interesting companion article for the other one. So I just want to open it up to ask anybody for any thoughts on either the articles or just how things are going right now from anyone's perspective. Any feedback or things you want to share?
I did go onto the to sign up for it and whatnot, but it didn't seem to list teachers in the drop down menu. Maybe did I miss it or
Sign up for
sorry?
You mean sign up for?
Like you could sign up for the alert, but like it asked if you were like, a doctor or, these type of, had like things, but teacher was not on there.
It was at the end of the list. It was an educator. It was like essential worker, and it listed a bunch of essential workers, and it was a long list and educator.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You know what? And I got that question a couple of times yesterday. I'm going to send out some clarification on that this morning. So that was for the All-Vax, Lake County vaccination system. So I sent that out to community and teachers yesterday to go ahead and sign up for. And yeah, I got a few questions about how teachers should sign up, and that is an essential worker. You can also register your other family members and children. I also got a question about whether if you work in Lake County but don't live in Lake County, you can still sign up for the All-Vax system in Lake County. And the reason for that is that the vaccinations are purchased by the federal government. They're going to be free. And so it doesn't matter where. I mean, it's sort of like you can get them where you need to get them. There'll probably be a lot of that kind of shuffling around. We've also heard a little bit from the health department about the possibility of a closed vaccination pod for our teachers. So there might be an opportunity for us to provide the vaccination at school as opposed to having our teachers go through some of the other avenues, which would be, CVS, Walgreens, or even a drive-through with our high school. So there's lots of different ways it's being organized, but I'm happy to hear that there might be an opportunity for us to just provide those. The good thing about that then is that we can keep track along with our teachers of that second dose. I don't think anyone's worried about people going in for the first dose. It's just making sure everyone follows up with that second dose so that we can make sure everybody's good. Any other thoughts or questions on any of those topics? So we had a board meeting earlier this week where we shared some of the things that we're doing as to keep our staff kind of feeling connected during this time. We shared some reflections of our middle school students and how they're feeling right now, which was really interesting and powerful. We have sent out a survey now to our entire staff to kind of check in on how folks are feeling, starting to get responses for that. I can tell you that I certainly personally kind of feel the weight of this time of year and this situation right now. I think a lot of people are feeling tired. And I mean, from all aspects, parents, teachers, students, everyone's kind of feeling drained from this technology, this tech piece that we have going on. And just, this is, as teachers, I think we always know this break between Thanksgiving and winter break is a tough break. or this time period is tough because kids get excited, and then there's also the weather is changing, and so there's a lot. This is typically kind of a hectic and draining time of the year, but there's a lot of new types of emotions happening now, and so we're trying to check in and offer some different supports if we can. Anything to add to that?
I just want to say, I think I know the PTO and the parents have been trying to help too and provide stuff at school. I know at the elementary school, the cookie table is huge at this time of year. And so I don't know if I thank Carrie or who I think, but even if I have to get picked up and driven over there, I am going in and getting my cookies. So I think we appreciate everything as teachers. We appreciate everything that the parents are doing, and the administrators are working so hard to get us just connected, even though we're all in different places. Audrey and Kelly are doing a great job, and Nate and Joe, I know, are checking in on their teachers, and it's just making a huge, I think, difference to feel like, get us all connected as much as we possibly can. This is hard. And as teachers, we then turn and try and do that with the kids, right? We're trying to just connect with them as much as possible. And as hard as it is, it's like you spend your evenings searching on Pinterest and just all of these websites on how to connect with kids. So it's not like we're done at 3. We just keep going and trying, which is something that I know our teachers are working really hard to do. So as hard as this is, we're excited. We feel the joy. They made a huge effort to honor Hanukkah starting today for us Jewish folk. So, I mean, that's just a little things that help us get through every day in this time of year. So it's helpful. So thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. So I'll read one of the responses that's anonymous from our survey of our teachers. I think it's hard to feel like you're making much of an impact when you aren't in the physical classroom or school building. I'm working harder than I've ever worked, and sometimes this environment feels very isolating. I do think that being involved and being able to make a global difference is something that really motivates me. So I'm always looking for ways to make a positive impact on the greater school community. I'm a big picture person. I also think validation that it's okay not to be okay has really gotten me through. Positivity isn't always possible, and that's okay too. And I think that reflects a lot of kind of how folks are feeling a lot of days. Like we're still pushing hard. We're still trying to get better and do better things and try different things. And it's tough. It's tough a lot of days. And I know from a parent perspective, my youngest got up this morning and said, I don't need to get dressed. I'm not even going to school. And she's been remote since March. I mean, we know the rules, but it was like, I'm not feeling it today. So we're all definitely there. So I appreciate the thoughts. I appreciate you guys still showing up and having this discussion with me. If there isn't anything else to share in terms of personal thoughts or stories, I will take us into the data right now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I continue to meet weekly or even 2 times a week with the Lake County Health Department. Yesterday I met also or attended a webinar by the Illinois Department of Health, because as the science changes, things, continue to change, even guidance and things. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But just as a reminder, the incidence rate for Lake County is the number of positive cases out of the total population. We were sort of hovering around here when we were in person. So here's where we started, September 1st. And this was sort of the beginning of November. And we were kind of in until about here. So you can see where those numbers were. We have seen a tremendous spike in Lake County, but we've also seen this dip. the county at this point is still advocating a virtual or remote learning model, okay? That being said, these data points are still a little bit behind. So this is as of December 6th. They have recently re-added the hospital admissions. This data came off the dashboard for a while because they didn't really see that it was being impacted a lot. And the way they were calculating it for Lake County also wasn't really illustrating anything, but they've moved to a 7-day average. And you can see there's also been a tremendous spike in hospital admissions as well in the area. The testing turnaround time has continued to remain kind of in this space at around a 3-day average, although anecdotally, I can tell you that's not always what we're seeing, either with parents who are trying to get the results of testing or with our staff. So although this is what it's saying, that's not always the case in our experience. And then if you look at our zip code data, which again is lagging a bit, this is as of the 8th, we are definitely following the same trend. Again, this is where we were kind of hovering in this 20 to 25 to 30, maybe even tops incidence rate in our zip code. And that's where we felt like we were hanging on. You know, we weren't experiencing a lot of staff cases. We were still in the game. But once we saw this spike, we definitely started to feel it in terms of our staffing, and definitely got more reports of kids being symptomatic and those close contacts in the home. So we have followed that same trajectory. We're still up at, I can't see it because you guys are in front. So 35 per 100,000 cases. I did have somebody go ahead and calculate the actual, decimal or percentage of that, which seems very small. And I don't claim to know the science behind the 14 per 100,000 cases incident rate as being the threshold for the health department, but I know there's research behind it. And it has a lot to do with how the disease transmits, how transmissible it is. And there is a threshold that they've been looking at, which is 14. Again, we're at 35.7. The county is at 57. Our positivity rate, this is a really interesting graph that I noticed a couple days ago. I actually reached out to the health department. There is a glitch in our zip code data. This is not necessarily correct because it shot up to 21%, but they have put in a help request to their folks because that's not correct for our zip code. So they are looking into that right now. I can't tell you exactly what our positivity rate is. But at this point, that is where our data stands in terms of the zip code. I can tell you that at this point, we have definitely had more staff cases. We're at 5 staff cases of employees of the district. We've also had some of our outsourced employees positive as well. 12 positive cases with students that we know of. But the impact is not necessarily in terms of positive cases. The impact is more in terms of symptoms and being a close contact. And the reason for that is any of our staff who come in close contact or have symptoms, then we have to implement the guidance from the health department. And that's a requirement to stay home, get tested, etc. Now, the guidance is changing a little bit, even as of this week. So the CDC came out, you may have heard, with reducing the amount of time for quarantine, potentially being able to reduce that. And the change in the guidance seems to be coming from the fact that there's an issue with critical care and essential workers, right? And that typically what they're finding is the average amount of time from exposure until those first symptoms come out are 5 to 7 days. We've known this for a while. And that additional 7 days has been to make sure that you get through that window of time where the symptoms might appear. So the CDC has issued the ability for contact tracers to release somebody from quarantine or isolation at around 7 days, given a negative COVID test and still being asymptomatic. And again, that's a decision that's going to be up to the contact tracers. We do not do contact tracing as a district. The health department does that. They hire people, they train people to do that. So when we hear about a positive case, our nurses enter it into a system with the health department. The health department follows up. the people who are involved in the case go ahead and enroll in a symptom tracking system through the health department. And then eventually they're able to get the release from quarantine letter from the health department that we need to have them able to come back to school. So again, the CDC's new guidance impacts us in one way, in that contact tracers may be releasing people from isolation quicker than they have in the past, but they may not. It's not a mandate. It's just an option for consideration for contact tracers. But it's a little bit also hopeful for us in the sense that they're kind of validating that 5 to 7 day window is about when most of the symptoms would have appeared if there was contact, which is a good thing. Any questions on that information or that process? Sarah?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So I know that the amount of days it's taking to get test results has definitely increased. How many additional days is it taking to get that letter that needs to be provided to school?
So that is not a timing issue. If somebody enrolls in that system and does what they need to do, and I think I haven't had to do it personally, but I think what it has to do is some periodic check-ins, reporting your symptoms or no symptoms. Once you're in that system, the system actually can generate that letter for you. We can't get it. Nobody else can get it, but the person that's enrolled. So if I was the one that had been a close contact, my release from isolation date would be put into that system for me. And as long as I was kind of entering that I was asymptomatic and everything was fine, I would be able to go in on that last day, generate the letter myself, and give it to the school. Jennifer, and Kathy, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, some people aren't enrolling in the symptom tracker program, so I think it makes it more difficult for them to get the letter. And then sometimes the health department, when they're not able to associate that close contact with a positive case, they've been giving me difficulty with the letter. So there are some times where I am having to call and I'm struggling to get the letter for certain individuals. But as long as they enroll in that symptom tracker, it seems to have been easier.
I mean, the
Agreed.
health department seems to, they've hired a lot of people, they've onboarded a lot of new contact tracers, they do have a lot more personnel. Each case is different. I think that's where, it's a bit of a struggle. Every case is different, depending on exposure, depending on symptoms, depending on the circumstances. And the contact tracers obviously, have to use some judgment in there as well. So I think that's also some of it. Any other questions on that? Okay, so given that new information, I do have some thoughts around, at this point, we have indicated that we would like to be back by that Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day, which is January 19th. And that was to account for the 2-week quarantine period that we would like to give everyone after winter break. As you know, we had about 40%-ish of our families indicate that they would be mixing with folks outside their home. We had about 55% of our staff indicate that they would be as well. So we're, in that range for both groups. I do think there is a need for at least somewhat of a quarantine time period after winter break. Again, you saw the graph. We're getting close to where we were sustaining in-person instruction, but we're definitely not there yet. So I have some thoughts, though, around some options that we might have when we come back, and I'd just like to get some feedback. So we have a couple of things that we need to do as a public school coming back to school in January. So one of them is called access testing. Access testing is a standardized test that we do for our English language learners, and it is an individualized one-on-one in some parts, and in some parts it's not an individual test, but there's many components to this test that ultimately gives us an idea of the English proficiency of our students who are learning English as a second language, okay? That assessment needs to be done with all of those students, and they do need to be in person. There has been no relaxation on that guidance because it's a very individualized assessment. It has to do with reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So that window of time begins for us in January. We do have a big group of students who need to be assessed. So we would like to, or we're thinking about potentially beginning that assessment after winter break and having our students come in one-to-one or in very small groups in person that first week after winter break, so that we have a lot of open space in our buildings to have our teachers be able to be very distance from the kids, but still start to complete those assessments. They're very time consuming and they are mandated. They give us good information. But once we get our kids back, I think it will be difficult to find enough space in our buildings to be able to conduct the assessments in an efficient and effective way. So one idea we have is to start right away with those children right after break. That limits the number of children that are in the building. We start getting people back though, and we start making sure, and we have a little bit of time that first week to still watch the numbers, okay? So then that second week, which would I think be the 11th, January 11th, potentially we could continue with that assessment and possibly bring in our youngest learners, pre-KK, pre-KK and 1, and then maybe 6th grade, so that we get a portion of the students back in the building, a portion of the teachers, so that we can still watch the numbers, keep less people in the building, but start getting folks back and get used to our procedures again. And then so that by the 19th, we would have everyone back that would like to be back. Now, again, whenever those groups are brought back, the students who indicated that they wanted to be back for trimester 2 would be included in those groups. So the groups that we would have would already be bigger than the groups that we've been bringing back. But so the idea is to kind of use those 2 weeks that we've already designated as kind of a break to start staggering those entrances back into school if the metrics support it. We'd still be looking at those local zip code numbers. You know, if we see a spike after, you know, that first week of winter break and all of a sudden the numbers go crazy and we're at, you know, 40, 50 per 100,000, that's not going to be sustainable. If we keep continuing to hear about our staff who aren't available, that we might not be able to do what we're saying we'd like to do. But if our staff are healthy, the numbers are sustaining around that 20 to 30 per 100,000, that's a possibility for us to do. So I'm putting it out there as a thought and would like to get some feedback on it.
I can't speak for the EL teachers much, but having shared a room with EL teachers and working closely with them, the access testing is like a gigantic undertaking in a normal regular school year. It impacts we don't see them for like 2 months because they have so many kids. So I think that if that's a possibility, like you said, and it allows them to get the testing done in a safe way and can maybe just power through it. I think it's personally, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Jen and Brandy and Vanessa, all of you guys, but sounds like a good idea. I don't know what you guys think, EL teachers.
Well, yeah, we definitely have been mulling over different ways to attack this, and with the state or whoever makes the rules not really changing any of the guidelines, it's, here's my pun, virtually impossible to do with the full building. There wouldn't be locations to take the groups unless we were outside, and I think it's going to be cold and probably snowy, so that was just one idea that seemed to be feasible. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, the access test is it's the IAR for English proficiency, but it's way more involved. It's way more involved and individualized. Any thoughts on sort of staggered start for kiddos, starting for youngest folks?
It's actually Nicole. I had to borrow Carrie's login because I couldn't find the email. So I don't know why it's coming up as Carrie. Anyway, I was just thinking based on some feedback from the high school where it's the 8th graders last semester in the building. Does it make sense to first bring them in and give them that opportunity for as much time in the building as possible, as opposed to the sixth graders.
It's a good question, Nicole. Any thoughts on that?
Perhaps. I don't disagree with it. It is the smallest of the 3 grade levels that we have in person. If you give me a second, I can give you that actual number. So those in 8th grade requesting in person, we have a total of 58. And that's the combination of, no, I'm sorry. All right. I gotta update my numbers. I know it's the smallest group, but it's, I don't know that it makes a big difference from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard that too from the high schools. Just kind of trying to make sure the seniors, you know, since it's their last year, are getting what they need in terms of coming back in the building. I think that's something for us to think about. And as you said, no, it's great. Thank you. Oh, you got changed to Nicole.
Hey, you got it.
As you know, we also have, we still continue to bring in about 20 to 30 students between the 2 buildings every day now, the students who need additional support. So we would continue to bring those students in as well. So we would have those kids on top of whatever group we decide to bring in.
Can I just ask a quick question about the playground? Is it possible with the new guidelines that they could, if they're wearing masks, play on the playground? The few kids who are here, we've let them do that, and it's been so nice for them. And I know, like with the winter and stuff like that, maybe I'm just asking if that could be a possibility if they wear their mask. Plus, most kids wear their mask anyway. They don't even take them off when they go outside.
Especially now in the winter. I actually feel better with my mask on. I feel warmer. That's a good question, Paige, and I think we can consider that and take a look at what we might be able to put in place for them, just to still keep kind of a little bit of a distance between each other, but I think wearing the masks, and I think that's a possibility. I know that Nate kind of opened up the gym for a couple of kiddos who haven't had a chance to do a little basketball, and those kinds of things really help kids. Yeah, it's a great question.
I had a question and I asked it earlier. Since we are all remote and the goal is in January, is there any chance to change the schedule to get everybody on the same lunch schedule with like the same time allowance? Because I know each grade is different due to like they have different mask breaks at different times, but if we're all home not wearing masks, is there a chance that we can cut some of those breaks and add it to lunch? Might sound ridiculous, but the jealousy is high in this house when there's a half an hour for some, 20 for others, and an hour for another one. And just managing it all, it's a little easier if we can get everybody on the same schedule.
Thanks, Carrie. We'll take a look. I know I'm finding the same thing in my home. It's interesting how those breaks pop up sometimes. Any other thoughts or questions, feedback? I will be honest about the timeline on this decision, since we will still be looking at the metrics in the zip code and kind of paying attention to the health department recommendations and guidelines. I don't feel like I can make this decision until we get into winter break and see kind of what's happening with the virus and the cases and where our staff are at. So it would still be toward the end of winter break that decision would be made, so that we can make sure that the numbers and the staffing would support that decision. And I know that that's a frustration, especially for our teachers, to kind of not know. That is just the state of the way things are right now. And I would hate to make a decision that I would wind up regretting pulling back later because the numbers are high. I think one thing that I have definitely heard consistently from the health department is just that the vaccination is great news. We want everyone to go ahead and get into that system. We're happy that teachers are early in the system, but regardless of that, because of the limited number of vaccinations, because of so many unknowns with it, I don't anticipate that for the rest of the school year, the 6-foot limitation or the masking limitations will be lifted. Those will probably be in place for the majority of the rest of this school year. So, however, I think by summer, we'll be in a much better spot for next year. I'm really feeling very hopeful about next school year right now. But I don't anticipate much changing for the rest of this year, at least in terms of the 6 feet or the masking, just because of the number of vaccinations that we have available to us and the infrastructure to get that done. So it's still really important for folks to wear masks. It's still really important to watch who you're with, to watch for symptoms, to monitor for all that. And the more we can get those cases down in the zip code, the more confident in this and the county, the more confident we'll feel that we can bring kids back and sustain the in-person piece. And we know how important it is, how helpful it is. Got to get a lot of feedback from parents that although school looks different when we're in, which it does, it's still really helpful to some of our kiddos. Just to have that change of environment and a different person monitoring their learning.
Lisa, it's Nicole again. I thought of one more question. With additional people coming back in the building, are there any modifications to the days kids are going to be attending if they are hybrid, or any changes like that?
So I can respond to that one from the middle school perspective. I'm excited to say that we were able to accommodate the requests of all of our families who submitted an interest in being in person. There was the follow-up survey that went home, which basically asked, are you wanting to continue with 5 days in, 5 days out, move to hybrid? And in doing so, we've got a plan for accommodating all of those requests. In terms of adding any additional since that survey had gone out, we're tight. We're going to be really close to making it work as far as being able to accommodate the 6-foot distance and the classroom and supervision piece. So we're not able to open that back up again, but at least for those parents that responded that they'd like an in-person option, we're going to be able to do it. In part because some of the families that had kids in 5 days a week have selected to go to the hybrid 2 days a week. So while we have greater numbers, we're adding our overall in-person numbers by about 25, but we're able to hold steady with the classrooms, 3 per grade level, due to the fact that we have an increased number of those doing hybrid.
And I'm sorry, I don't think I asked my question very clearly. So if they were going Monday and Wednesday, are they still going Monday and Wednesday, or are any kids switching to Tuesday, Thursday, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, we're not planning on switching those Monday, okay. Tuesday.
Everything stays the same if you were already in. Okay, thank you.
The one piece of clarifying info that I would have, it's our Monday, Wednesdays determined by last name, and that's staying consistent with A through K on Monday and Wednesday, and then L through Z on Tuesday and Thursday. There were some unique cases based on some adjustments that happened. We are going to try to standardize that as much as possible just for our numbers' sake, but we'll communicate any of those slight adjustments. And it would only be a unique case anyway. It's not, there's very few adjustments and none on a large scale. It's just a little tweak here or there.
Kelly, are you on the call? Yeah.
I can absolutely speak. So at elementary, our hybrid numbers are much lower than the middle school. There are no changes that I am aware of in terms of days adjusting as we bring more students in. Our bigger changes or impact come along with teaching assignment. So there are some students who started the year with one teacher and maybe changing to a different teacher in order for us to accommodate students in the building. We also have some classes that were fully remote and maybe shifting to blended. So the teacher will be teaching students that are in school as well as remote learners. The teaching assignment change letters have already gone out. So we confirmed with families, your child is scheduled to come in person to make sure that that confirmation was clear. And then it also was sort of like the placement letter. So their teacher will be fill in the blank. I do need to send out there for some of the blended letters that haven't necessarily gone home. So if I'm a remote student and I'm remaining remote, there might be some changes. There are some changes at certain grade levels where that child is now going to see a Zoom call where some of the learners in their class are in the building and their teacher may be in the building as well. So I think just for clarity in this team and group and information, if you're following me, those are some of the bigger adjustments. So location change and teacher assignment change.
Kelly, after you sent those out, did you have many adjustments? Parents came back and said that they, were no longer interested, or?
Yeah, we did have a few. I think that I was anticipating more, to be totally honest, but just a handful of parents replied. And in those letters, I requested that if families had a change of heart or are feeling differently, that they needed to communicate that by Friday, December 4th. And so I got a couple that trickled in over the weekend and have made those changes on the class lists. And are still, there's no you're not locked into anything. I mean, I recognize that every decision is requiring a lot of thought and there's a lot of emotion. And so families can still change their mind, but we wanted to make sure if there were going to be drastic changes in numbers that we could adjust and accommodate accordingly.
Yeah, that's a great point, to keep reminding folks that that remote option is available and will continue to be available throughout the year. Okay. Any other questions?
Can I just clarify before we go, Dr. Leali? You're gonna send out communication like towards the end of break, right before that first week of January, and we're gonna lay out like this first week of January, we're gonna do access testing. Like you're gonna, but we should plan on that January 19th being the full, come back as planned, but you're gonna lay it all out, correct?
We're still gonna try to, so at the end of that second week, it's a great question. I'm gonna try to make a call until what's gonna happen all the way through those first 3 weeks of January. But okay. I would say, Tracy, I think, has already been in touch with our ELL, or at least has been thinking through that piece with the ELL teachers. So there's some planning that's going on ahead of time, just in case we're able to do that. And then it would be 1 week additional time for some students in the building. And obviously if families have already, have plans or are not going to be able to come in, that's okay. But yes, we should plan on that January 19th date would be the time that we would all be coming back with our additional families incorporated. And again, I just want to keep this out there. We're still going to be watching the numbers. We're still going to be kind of making sure that our staff are healthy enough, that we have enough people to be able to do this. I cannot reiterate enough how difficult it is when we don't have enough people. We have to try and have subs, shifting and those kinds of things. And we're even experiencing it now, even with this very small group in each building, that it can be really, really difficult to find adults to supervise if a teacher has to shift to remote or be home. So that is a major impact on our system, and could potentially, even if the metrics are good and looking and positive, that would still cause us to have to shift to a remote platform at some point in the future. Any other questions or thoughts?
I just had a follow-up question, Dr. Leali, it's Vanessa. In terms of teachers and the requirement or expectation for teachers to be coming in, are we shifting that so all teachers should be coming in after break? I just want to clarify that because I feel like it's
a good question. We haven't really talked about that yet, gotten that far in our planning, but it's a good question for you to bring up. Teachers have been able to come in this whole time if they'd like. So I, speaking from just off the top of my head right now, I think that would continue to be a choice. for teachers if they didn't have to be in school, that they could work remotely if they needed to. So I don't see us changing that and making it a mandate until your students are with you in the school. If you didn't get a chance to kind of watch the beginning part of the board meeting with some thoughts from our students and around what we're doing with staff, I would encourage you to go ahead and look at that video. It was really, really powerful. It's really something that we as an admin team are trying to stay focused on. What are we doing with our students? How are we supporting them? How are they feeling? We're also trying to stay on top of how our staff are feeling, making sure that we're providing what they need in terms of support so that they can go ahead and do what they need to do with our students. It really is a community effort. Right now, we know it's taking everyone's energy and everyone's support to keep moving through this. Parents, we appreciate you more than you know, what you're doing to keep your students on track, getting them dressed every morning, which for me was more of a hassle today than I thought it would be. We recognize the different schedules. We hear you on the, distractions in the home and tech issues. And I just couldn't be more grateful for the amount of support this community is putting into this effort, and not only for their own children, but we've had a tremendous outpouring of wishes to donate and give to our families who are struggling right now financially to support the rest of the community. And I really do think that's a great way to spend energy right now, to think about what we can do to help others. It's a great focus for kids. It's a great focus any holiday season. But this year especially, to kind of take that focus and put it into something productive and positive. PTO, we couldn't be more thankful for you and everything you do to support our teachers and our families and students. So let's keep plugging along. We'll keep moving through. And if there's any other thoughts, as always, if there's any thoughts or feelings that you have after this meeting, please don't hesitate to email, give one of us a call. As an admin team, we'll be meeting this week and next week to kind of flesh out more of these ideas. We'll be communicating with our staff as we know more. And as always, thanks for everything you do.